Good morning, everybody, and welcome to the latest Traders Report by Matthew Dixon on 3.0 TV. So this morning we'll dive straight in. I'm looking at the SPX. This is the S&P 500, the S&P 500 stock indices from in America. I'm looking at this because there is a lot of correlation between markets, even between cryptocurrency and stock markets around the world. So this actually gives us quite a clear picture. So I'm looking right back to what I've labeled here as wave three in Elliott wave terms. In Elliott wave, we have impulses which are in five waves, labeled one, two, three, four, five, and corrections normally in three waves, A, B, C. So the previous all-time high that we had back in February, I've labeled as wave three. We've had a very clear correction from there in the form of an A, a B, and a C to the downside, and that completes wave four correction. Now, I believe we're working on a final wave five here. That will be the end of the impulsive move. As I say, impulses are in five waves. After that, we would expect there to be a substantial ABC correction to the downside, but we're still at the moment working within that impulsive wave five to the upside. So wave five is broken into five waves, and Elliott wave works in fractals. That means there are waves within waves within waves. So for example, from this wave four, we have a wave one up in red, two down in red, three up in red, four down in red, and we're working on a final fifth wave in red. But this is all part of a larger fifth wave. And even the wave three itself here is broken into five waves in blue I've got. So labeled from here, we've got one up in blue, two down in blue, three up in blue, four down in blue, and five up in blue, making a larger wave three. So that's really why I'm saying waves within waves. Now, with corrections, I said A, B, C, normally in three waves, but there are actually quite a few variables, variable options within the corrections where you can have a simple A, B, C. You can have what's called a triangle, as we've got labeled here, A, B, C, D, E. But corrections tend to be very much overlapping. Impulsive moves are really more powerful moves generally in the direction of the overall trend. So we have here from wave three, a corrective wave four triangle. This is known as a pre-terminal wave. So this is the one before the terminal wave. Then the terminal wave is a thrust from the triangle to, in this case, to the upside. A final thrust to the upside, which will complete wave five of a larger wave five, in fact. So we're actually looking at completion of a movement up in the S&P on a number of different wave fractals or time frames, you might like to say. So that's telling me that once we do reach the end of this fifth wave, we should get a substantial move to the downside. We have some other indicators that give us an idea of what's going on. So for example, we have here what's called divergence. This one is actually just regular bearish divergence where you have higher highs in price and corresponding, you have to line these up perfectly, corresponding lower highs in RSI here. So that's telling you that whilst price was going higher, it was not supported by volume. The volume was actually falling away. And that's very typical of the end of an impulse here, as we see here. And you'd expect, being regular bearish divergence, this signals there's expected to be a down move at this point. And that is precisely what happened. We got a down move in the form of this triangle correction. And then we started moving up in the triangle, by the way, if you remember, is a pre-terminal wave. And then following that, we expect a terminal thrust to the upside. And that's exactly what happened. And we actually predicted this again in advance when Trump was bombing the Iranian nuclear sites. That was the point at the bottom of this wave four here. And we got a sharp move to the upside. And that was expected. It often happens when bad news hits the market. It's normally a time when the market's bottoming out, and then you expect some recovery after that. So all the signals, all the fundamental news, everything was aligning for this pump in the market here. Now, once again, interestingly, we had some further divergence, and I'll just open this one out so you can see it reasonably clearly. So recently, very recently, just a matter of days ago, we had some further divergence here with, again, higher highs in price and corresponding lower highs in RSI. We also had RSI coming from what's called overbought levels. So over 70 is recognized as overbought. That's telling you that, again, the higher highs in price were not supported by volume because volume was falling away, was diminishing. And so the market is being pushed by maybe some small players, but the institutions have already taken profit. The whales perhaps have already taken profit in this market, and it's only being pushed by the enthusiasm of a few perhaps retail traders just thinking the market's going to go up and up and up. But this is telling us, again, at this point, we'd expect a downturn. That's precisely what's happening. I think a downturn is underway. So, whilst we've had a really good start to the week, perhaps over the weekend, we've had a good start. We've had Bitcoin rising to 109,000, Ethereum well back over 2,500. Solana's bounced back up. It was down at 146 earlier in the weekend. It's now 151. So we're having a good start to the week, but I'm suspecting this may not be carried through. So again, I don't chase markets higher. We're at a local high in a lot of the markets right now. So I won't be chasing the market higher. I'll wait for a bit of a pullback. I always prefer to buy dips in the market. It's usually a better strategy than chasing higher highs in the market. It's very dangerous to do that. So we did actually have some news through. There's a new upgrade on Ethereum. It's supposed to stop DOS attacks, so denial of service attacks. This is where a protocol is overwhelmed and it can cause a crash. In the case of Ethereum, it can cause congestion. And so they put this new protocol in place to limit the gas. And basically, it means the practical implication is it should mean smoother transactions, quicker transactions, and cheaper transactions for typical users of the Ethereum network, the Ethereum protocol. So it's a good thing, should help with Ethereum. Again, I think just maybe we have had a nice move to the upside, but I think that we should. It doesn't look particularly impulsive right now. I think we may have had an A down, possibly a B up. We may expect a bit of a C down. So I think later on in the week, we'll get probably a bit further of a pullback. And I mentioned this on X when I was talking about Solana over the weekend. There's a couple of options here. And remember, we never have absolute certainty in the markets. So I look at options. There are many possibilities in the market, and we have to assign probabilities to each possibility. So I've got marked here a buy zone somewhere around this sort of area. I'm not absolutely precise, but again, I'm looking to buy a dip. It's entirely possible. I think that we've had an A wave down because there's no overlap in this wave down. So I've labeled it as an A wave. And then I've got potentially a B wave triangle, which is made up of A, B, C, D, E. And then following that, we'd expect another push down, probably similar in magnitude to this A wave here. You'd probably get a similar push down here. Would take me somewhere around this buy zone area, I believe. So at the moment, I think we are going to be a little bit more choppy sideways action at the moment in the crypto markets, probably in markets in general, maybe a bit more choppy movement and a bit more downside perhaps before we see further upside. So we have had some, relatively positive news through on the economic front. I say economic, geopolitical, economic, I suppose political. We've had Elon Musk launch a new political party in America. He's actually going to go up against Republicans and Democrats. He's trying to, get away from this two-party thing in America. But he's pro-crypto. As we know, Elon Musk is pro-crypto. He said he's going to be pro-crypto with this new party. So that could be just another positive thing. America has really turned from being, under the Biden times, very anti-crypto. And now it's more and more pro-crypto. So I think it's setting the backdrop for hopefully a rally at some point to nice new all-time highs, certainly for Bitcoin, probably for many other crypto assets as well. So that's really encouraging. We'll flip back to Bitcoin. I'll just show you what I mean by that. When I scroll out a little bit longer term on Bitcoin, we can see here, I talked about impulses at the start of this show, just saying impulses tend to be powerful moves, not overlapping. There's no overlap here between this wave and this wave and this wave. But this movement downward, there's a lot of overlap here, where this movement up here overlaps this movement down here, and so on. Even within the waves, there's lots of overlap. So this, for me, seems like the impulsive direction is to the upside. The correction is sideways and slightly downside. At some point, we should blast through this previous all-time high of almost 112,000, wasn't it? Just about. on what I've got labeled as wave three. This choppy movement is labeled wave four. So a little bit like the S&P. As I say, there's correlation between markets where markets tend to move in the same sort of direction. Then following a wave four, I'm thinking possibly we've got a five wave move to the upside here, which again, waves within waves. So that five wave move itself will be made up of five waves itself. And even the first wave is made up of five waves. So we've got here wave one, wave two, wave three, wave four, and wave five. So following that, I'm expecting an ABC correction to the downside, which I believe is well underway. And again, that fits with what we've just seen in the rest of the markets with the S&P, with Ethereum, with Solana. So I'm expecting a little bit more downside here before at some point, reasonably near future, I'm hoping we push quite impulsively to the upside to bring Bitcoin to brand new all-time highs. And that would follow on very nicely with all the fundamental positive news we're getting out there and possibly even peace initiative in the Middle East. This is all good news. So just probably to finish the show, we'll take a quick look at the dollar index, DXY. Again, as we predicted on previous shows, we said there's going to be a bounce higher. That's precisely what's happened. I'll just look on a longer time scale here so we can see more clearly. I expected there to be a bounce higher in dollar index. That's precisely what's happened. I think I probably need to go shorter term to really see this with some clarity. The only problem is it doesn't look as though it's particularly impulsive at the moment. Again, we talked about overlap. There seems to be overlap here, but having said that, this movement up here, there's a trend line that touches that as a boundary for these peaks. I'll just draw it in. Now, very often when you see there's a variation in crypto where you have what's called a leading diagonal. And they tend to stick within trend lines, and that's precisely what's happening here. So I think that we could have a leading diagonal, which would be a wave one, and then maybe an ABC wave two down, which won't go below the start of this, and then another strong push to the upside. So as we potentially push, basically continue with this correction here, markets will remain a little bit choppy because there's no clear direction on the dollar. We know now, I say we know, but it's pretty well nailed on that interest rates will stay on hold at the next meeting. But we've had some really powerful figures out of the US in terms of employment figures. Economic data is reasonably strong in the US. So that means we're not going to lower interest rates. They can't lower interest rates because the US economy is going pretty well. Inflation's still, not on target anyway. It's still above target. So they can't lower interest rates yet. But later in the year, I think it's on the cards that probably we'll see lower interest rates. But I think with that said, lower interest rates would be expected to cause weaker dollar. But don't forget, this is all relative. We're talking about the dollar in relation to a basket of other currencies. So the dollar index is actually the US dollar measured against a basket of other world currencies, the main one of those being the euro. So we need to watch also what's happening with the euro to keep this into perspective. But also, even if we did see weak economic data out of the US, there could be geopolitical issues flare up again that drove the dollar higher. So we can't know the reasons in advance, but we can look at the charts, and the charts are telling us pretty well what's going to happen. And actually, the events will fall into place to validate the charts. That's very often the case. So pretty packed show today. Hope it was helpful. Look forward to catching up again Thursday, where we'll hopefully have some more news and updates on the market and tell you where hopefully we'll be going in the near future, and hopefully to new all-time highs soon for Bitcoin. See you again soon, and bye for now.